For 7 days, the United States would wait for news, not rumors, not memories, news. There would be no images from the moment it happened, no photographs in the morning papers to explain what had gone wrong, no instant confirmation. Information traveled by telegraph, short messages, often incomplete, and by newspapers that could only print what they knew at the moment the presses stopped. Each day would bring a new edition. Each edition would reshape the country's mood. This is not the story of an ending. It is the story of a week, lived day by day, bulletin by bulletin, as Americans tried to understand what had happened to their president. We begin before anyone knew how long the waiting would last. Saturday morning, July 2nd, 1881. It is warm across much of the country. Men read newspapers at breakfast tables. Women begin their daily routines. Trains arrive and depart on schedule. In Washington, D.C., President James A. Garfield enters the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Depot, expecting nothing more than a routine summer journey. He is accompanied by Secretary of State James G. Blaine. They speak casually as they walk. The president has come to purchase a ticket for Long Branch, New Jersey. Then, without warning, 2 gunshots are fired. Newspapers will report that one bullet strikes the president's arm, while another enters his back near the kidneys. Within hours, telegraph wires will carry the news outward, city by city, town by town, until the entire nation understands that something unthinkable has occurred. This is day 1. This is how Americans first learned their president had been shot. Shortly after 9 o'clock in the morning, President James A. Garfield arrives at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Depot in Washington. He is not alone. Secretary of State James G. Blaine walks beside him. They are speaking casually about travel, about the coming summer. The president is there to purchase a ticket for Long Branch, New Jersey. Then, without warning, 2 gunshots ring out. Newspapers report that one bullet strikes the president's arm, while another enters his back near the kidneys. Garfield staggers. He collapses inside the ladies' waiting room. For a moment, confusion reigns. Then panic. The President of the United States lies bleeding on the floor of a public train station. Within minutes, the station fills with shouting voices. Doctors are summoned. Bystanders press forward, then are pushed back. The newspapers describe Garfield being lifted and carried upstairs, then later removed by ambulance to the White House. Washington reacts instantly. Crowds flood the streets. People run toward telegraph offices. Reporters fight for access to wires and witnesses. By mid-morning, telegrams begin racing across the country. And they do not agree. Some declare the president mortally wounded. Others offer guarded hope. Editors openly admit that reports are conflicting, incomplete, and changing by the hour. America is forced to wait. Almost immediately, newspapers report that the shooter was arrested on the spot. But even here, certainty does not exist. His name is variously reported as Doherty, Grottle, or something else entirely. He is described as a crazy man, a discharged government employee, possibly a former U.S. consul to Marseille. One alarming detail stands out above all others. The man reportedly declares, "I am a stalwart. Arthur is president now." That single sentence detonates like a second shot. By afternoon, newspapers openly report wild rumors afloat. Some telegrams suggest the shooting may be part of a deep-laid political conspiracy to place Vice President Chester A. Arthur into office. Others hint at involvement by the stalwart faction of the Republican Party, long at odds with President Garfield. The nation has seen this before. Editors explicitly compare the shock to the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, warning that the presidency itself may be under threat. Yet, just as quickly as the rumors appear, denials follow. Political leaders telegraph statements of horror. Factional involvement is indignantly denied, but the damage is done. On day one, Americans do not yet know whether this was madness or politics or something darker. Across the country, the reaction is visceral. Newspapers report crowds surrounding bulletin boards, demanding updates. Men stop reporters in the street and force them to read telegrams aloud. Church bells toll in some towns. The tone of the press is unmistakable. Shock, grief, fear, and anger. Editors write that no crime has stirred such feeling since 1865. For many Americans, the memory of Lincoln's death is not history. It is lived experience. And now, it feels dangerously close again. Yet when readers turn the page, they see something striking. Life has not stopped. The same newspapers carrying urgent telegrams about the wounded president also report, almost calmly, on crime and punishment elsewhere in the country. In the Osceola Times of Arkansas, readers encounter the conclusion of the New Madrid murder case from Missouri. 3 men, Myers, Brown, and Mitchell, stand convicted. 2 are sentenced to hang. 1 is sent to prison for 30 years. The trial is over. The verdicts are final. The story is printed without drama, as one more settled account in a nation accustomed to reading about death in its daily columns. What makes the moment unsettling is the contrast. That same paper carries commentary questioning whether public executions have become spectacle, even as it reports death sentences as routine fact. Just pages away, Americans are learning that their president has been shot. The Garfield attack does not arrive in isolation. It breaks into a world already filled with violence in print. And perhaps that is why the news feels both shocking and grimly believable at the same time. This is not the first blood readers have seen on the page. It is simply the first time it has reached the presidency. In New York, another political drama unfolds. Thomas C. Platt abruptly withdraws from the U.S. Senate race. Papers mock the chaos and bitterness of party infighting, and editors remark that the country laughs instead of clenching its fist. Even as a president lies wounded, politics grind on. Elsewhere in the columns, the news turns darker still. Reports of settlers killed in clashes during the Paiute War appear beside stories of fires destroying mills and throwing hundreds out of work. Cyclones wreck boats and drown sailors. A young railroad worker is burned to death inside a rail car. Death in 1881 is never far from the headlines, and still, wonder survives. Readers learn of a newly discovered comet, possibly the long-expected comet of 1812. Its brightness is compared to Jupiter. Arguments break out over who deserves credit and prize money for finding it. Even on a day of terror, the sky still draws eyes upward. From places like Eureka, Nevada, the pages tell a quieter story. Advertisements fill entire columns. Hotels announce vacancies. Saloons promote their doors as open and welcoming. Meat markets list fresh cuts. Rail schedules run on time. Fraternal society meetings are posted. Labor notices appear without pause. This is perhaps the most haunting contrast of all. History is breaking. Yet groceries must still be bought. Trains must still depart. Meetings must still be held. Even as the nation reels, daily life continues in print, steady and unbroken. As night falls on July 2nd, 1881, Americans know only this. The president has been shot. He is alive, but gravely wounded. The assassin is in custody, but his motives remain unclear. Rumors swirl faster than facts. The nation is waiting. Newspapers go to press with uncertainty baked into every line. Editors know that what they print tonight may be wrong by morning. Tomorrow's papers will change everything. As presses fall silent and telegraph wires continue to hum through the darkness, one question hangs over the country. Will the president live? Rumors circulate, some hopeful, some dire. Doctors speak with caution, choosing words as carefully as medicine. Political conversations quiet, then resume in whispers. No one yet understands how long this vigil may last, only that it has begun. That is where the day closes. By Sunday morning, July 3rd, 1881, America wakes into uncertainty. The shot fired on Saturday still echoes, not in sound, but in ink. Newspapers arrive folded and damp with fresh press oil, carrying the same fragile truth into kitchens, parlors, and boarding houses across the country. The president lives. Reporters write cautiously now. Gone is the wild confusion of the first bulletins. In its place comes restraint and dread. One paper tells readers that the president passed a comparatively comfortable night. Another adds, more soberly, that the wound is of a character which renders any confident prediction impossible. Doctors admit they cannot find the second bullet. That single sentence appears again and again in slightly different forms across the country. The bullet could not be located. The bullet remains lodged somewhere within the body. The surgeons are uncertain. It is not drama. It is medicine. And in 1881, medicine is guesswork. The president, papers note, is conscious, calm, at moments even cheerful. When told his chances are slim, one account reports him replying quietly, "Then we will take that chance." The words are reprinted everywhere. Across the nation, people cling to them. Sunday is a day meant for rest. Instead, it becomes a day of watching. Telegraph offices draw crowds. Bulletins are posted in windows. Men stop in the street to read aloud to one another. Churches open their doors outside regular hours. Ministers pause sermons to pray for the president's life. Newspapers describe the country as suspended. Business slows. Some offices close entirely. Stock prices waver, then steady, then waver again, following rumor more than fact. Mrs. Garfield is on her way to Washington. Papers describe her journey in careful language, noting her poor health and the fear that she may arrive too late. Each train report is followed closely. Meanwhile, the man who fired the shots sits behind locked doors. Charles Guiteau is no longer just a name. He is a fixation. Sunday papers sketch his life in uneasy detail. Failed lawyer, failed preacher, relentless office seeker, he is described as excitable, unstable, and convinced of his own righteousness. One account notes that he exhibits no remorse. Another claims he believes himself divinely justified. Authorities fear violence, not from him, but toward him. Newspapers openly discuss the possibility of lynching. Guards are doubled. His location is kept vague. The public, already shaken, demands certainty where none exists. The president may yet live. The assassin may yet be tried. But nothing feels settled. Then, without warning, The tone shifts. Turn the page. Beside reports of the president's pulse and temperature appears something entirely different. A dramatic story from Europe. It is titled, "A Bet's Masquerade, The Murder in the Crowd." The language is vivid. A woman stabbed during a balloon festival in Paris. Hundreds nearby. No one sees the blow. Her jewels untouched. Her identity unknown. The writing is lush, theatrical, and unsettling. This is not breaking news. There is no dateline, no arrest, no court record. It is crime feuilleton, a sensationalized narrative inspired by the style of real European murders, written to be read slowly like a short novel. And it sits calmly beside the president's condition. To modern eyes, the contrast is jarring. To an 1881 reader, it is familiar. Sunday papers are not built only to inform. They are built to hold attention. Further down the page, the world resumes its ordinary shape. Legal notices announce divorces, foreclosures, and sheriff's sales. One woman seeks separation on the grounds of neglect and habitual drunkenness. Another property is scheduled for auction on the courthouse steps. Employment ads call for railroad laborers. Mining companies list stock prices. Banks promise secure deposits. Train schedules promote 4th of July excursions, reduced fares, special holiday routes. Restaurants advertise hot dinners. Hotels boast clean rooms and attentive service. Saloons promote cold beer and good cigars. Patent medicines promise cures for weakness, coughs, and nerves. None referencing the nation's crisis. The press does not pause. It never does. What Sunday, July 3, 1881 reveals is not just what Americans knew, but how they lived with knowing. They move through the paper without ceremony. One column speaks of a bullet lodged deep in the president's body. Another describes a stage performance in New York. Elsewhere, a train departs on holiday schedule. Prayer notices appear beside excursion fares. Medical bulletins share space with advertisements for dinner and lodging. Nothing is separated. Nothing is paused. The newspaper holds it all at once. The nation's fear, its routines, its distractions. As Sunday draws on, no resolution arrives in print. Only repetition. The updates are the same. The uncertainty remains. The words are measured. The president is alive. He remains under watch. Doctors continue their attendance. And across the country, newspapers are folded once more, not with answers, but with the same unfinished account readers have been carrying since the shots were fired. The morning of July 4th, 1881, does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives with telegrams. Across the country, presses begin to roll before dawn, ink still wet as boys rush fresh editions into the streets. Flags are already draped from buildings. Bunting hangs from balconies. Brass bands prepare to play. But none of it can drown out the words that dominate every front page, words set in heavier type than the declaration itself. Suspense. A nation's anxiety. Change for the worse in the night. 2 days after the shooting at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station, President James A. Garfield lies wounded in the executive mansion. And on this Independence Day, newspapers tell Americans plainly, his life now trembles in the balance. Bulletins from the White House arrive with clinical precision. Pulse, 108. Temperature, 99.4. Respiration increased. Pain radiates through the feet and legs, an alarming symptom attributed to nerve injury. Tympanites, inflammation. words most readers do not fully understand, but instinctively fear. Physicians explain that the president has passed through shock, survived hemorrhage, and has now entered the most dangerous stage of all. The thread that holds life, one report warns, is exceedingly fine. Editors do not soften the language. Many admit openly that the hopeful tone of earlier bulletins may have masked how grave the situation truly was. What had been optimism on Saturday now feels, by Monday morning, like wishful thinking. In Washington, the White House itself becomes a place of hushed movement. Cabinet members gather in small rooms, speaking in low tones. Telegraph operators work continuously, sending updates not just across the nation, but across the Atlantic. One dispatch notes that reports are being transmitted directly to Queen Victoria, proof that this is no longer simply an American crisis, but an international one. Vice President Chester A. Arthur arrives quietly and is received by Mrs. Garfield. Observers note the strain on his face. He speaks of grief, of hope, and then, with unmistakable sincerity, he utters words the newspapers repeat verbatim. "I pray to God that the president will recover. God knows I do not want the place I was never elected to." In the sick room, Garfield drifts between alertness and exhaustion. At times he speaks calmly, even reflectively. At others, pain overtakes him. Physicians work to relieve the agony in his lower extremities, worried that continued suffering may exhaust his strength. While there is life, there is hope, one consulting surgeon says, and says nothing more. Mrs. Garfield does not leave his side. Newspapers describe her composure with reverence. She whispers encouragement to her husband. She believes he will live, and the nation clings to her belief as if it might be contagious. Outside the White House gates, crowds form early. People gather, scanning faces for signs, stopping anyone who emerges, hoping for a word, any word, that might tilt the balance toward survival. Although it is the 4th of July, the usual language of celebration feels strangely out of place. Across the country, parades still assemble. Fireworks stands do business. Advertisements promise excursions, picnics, music, wine, and refreshment. Yet newspapers remark again and again on the altered mood. There is restraint, unease, a sense that the nation does not quite know how, or whether, to celebrate itself while its leader lies between life and death. In churches, sermons are rewritten. Prayers are added. Ministers speak not only of independence, but of fragility, of providence, of the uncertain future of the republic. Telegraph wires hum through the heat of the day. Rumors travel faster than confirmations. One bulletin suggests slight improvement. Another contradicts it within the hour. Hope rises. Hope falls. Americans learn to read between the lines. And still, the papers turn the page. Because even on a day like this, the world does not stop. In Dallas, Texas, a man named Adam Thompson is executed by hanging. Newspapers report it without embellishment. Convicted years earlier for the murder of a German storekeeper during a robbery, he walks to the gallows with composure. There is prayer. There is singing. Then the trap is sprung. 6 minutes pass before his pulse stops. His body hangs for 20 minutes before it is taken down. The sentence, the paper concludes simply, has been fulfilled. No editorial reflection, no moral debate. Just a few paragraphs surrounded by advertisements and weather reports. Routine justice, rendered quietly, even as a nation waits anxiously for another man to live. Elsewhere in Texas, near Houston, bodies are recovered from bayous. Investigations are underway. Details are sparse. Fear lingers. Along the Chesapeake Bay, violent storms wreck vessels and strand ships. Across the Atlantic, fires tear through parts of Europe, including a Swiss town where homes are destroyed and lives lost. Disasters large and small press on, indifferent to calendars and holidays. Politics continues too, almost defiantly. From his sickbed, President Garfield signs off on diplomatic nominations. The machinery of government moves forward, even as its chief executive lies gravely wounded. Foreign dispatches report enforcement of Germany's anti-socialist laws, with expulsions and unrest abroad. History does not pause. And then there are the lighter columns, the ones readers may linger over, if only to breathe. A whimsical poem greets a newly visible comet, half in awe, half in jest, wondering whether it is an omen or merely a curiosity. So welcome, though so unexpected, it begins, capturing the uneasy humor of a year many already. Believed to be cursed, serialized sketches offer comedy. One tale follows a married couple on a disastrous fishing excursion, ending with arguments, embarrassment, and an eel flung where no eel should ever be. Laughter, strained perhaps, still has its place. An excerpt from Jefferson Davis's new book recounts his capture at the end of the Civil War, resurfacing memories of another moment when the nation's future once hung in the balance. And everywhere, there are advertisements. Wine and whiskey, flour and coffee, mineral waters promising health, tonics claiming miracle cures, shoes, wallpaper, coal, hats, dresses, notices for dog taxes, insurance meetings, and railroad schedules. Commerce marches on, steady and relentless. History, tragedy, humor, and business all share the same page. As evening approaches, the 4th of July passes without resolution. No decisive bulletin arrives, no announcement of recovery, no final pronouncement of doom. The last editions go to press heavy with uncertainty. Editors offer no conclusion, only the truth as they have it in that moment. The president is alive. The president is suffering. The president is not out of danger. And the nation, having marked its independence with muted hearts, now waits for morning. As presses fall silent and fireworks fade into smoke, one question lingers in every household, every church, every telegraph office. Would July 5th bring relief or reckoning? The morning of July 5th, 1881, does not begin with certainty. It begins with waiting. Across the United States, newspapers are unfolded slowly. Hands linger on the page. Eyes scan not for commentary or opinion, but for signs of life. The nation knows the unthinkable has already happened. What it does not know, on this Tuesday morning, is whether the president will survive the day. One headline captures the mood with blunt honesty. The victim of the assassin hovering between life and death, with the chances 10 to 1 against his recovery. James A. Garfield is still alive, and that single fact is doing enormous work. Overnight, official bulletins reported that the president had passed a more comfortable night. He had slept. He had retained nourishment. To some readers, those words felt like a lifeline. To others, they sounded dangerously thin, phrases carefully chosen to soften what doctors were unwilling to say out loud. By mid-morning, crowds began forming outside newspaper offices, as they had for days. They stood quietly, shoulder to shoulder, watching clerks tack fresh bulletins onto boards. One paper observed, The pavement was thronged almost all afternoon and evening with a very quiet crowd. Quiet, but not calm. Inside the White House, the atmosphere was subdued and tightly controlled. Guards restricted access. Corridors that had been crowded the day before were now nearly silent. Cabinet members gathered in small rooms, speaking softly, waiting for updates they could not influence. A correspondent noted, "Everything wears a subdued look." The cabinet and ministers sat around in the private secretary's room, talking now and then in a quiet and low tone. This was not the sound of government in motion. It was the sound of government holding its breath. Doctors continued to explain the danger with clinical precision. Garfield had survived the first two threats, shock and hemorrhage, but the third, internal inflammation, had not yet fully arrived. There are 3 stages through which the president has to pass, one report explained. First, shock, next hemorrhage, third, inflammation. It was that final stage that haunted every conversation. Surgeon General Barnes attempted to steady the public by drawing on Civil War experience. He reminded readers that gunshot wounds to the liver were dangerous, but not always fatal. Injuries to the liver, he said, are not necessarily fatal, although dangerous. And yet, in the same breath, papers cautioned. Recoveries from wounds in the liver cannot, however, be looked forward to with certainty. Hope existed, but it was fragile, and still, Garfield himself remained composed. Throughout the day, reporters emphasized his calm demeanor. He spoke when he had the strength. He shook hands. At one moment in the afternoon, he addressed his doctor directly. "Doctor," he said, "I feel better than I have at any time since I was wounded." That single sentence traveled quickly, printed and reprinted, underlined by readers hungry for reassurance. "The president cheerful in the face of death," one headline declared. At his bedside, his wife remained constant. Newspapers returned again and again to her quiet strength. "She whispers to him words of cheer," one account noted. "She has a firm conviction that the president will live." Her presence mattered, not only to her husband, but to the country watching her endure. As bulletins shifted throughout the day, slightly better, then uncertain again, rumors filled the gaps. Some whispered that doctors were concealing the truth. Others feared the worst would come by nightfall. Dread alternating with hope in the hearts of the people, a paper summarized, as the news from Washington is favorable or the reverse. Meanwhile, attention also turned toward the man responsible. Charles Guiteau sat in prison, oddly calm, reportedly cooperative with photographers. He requested to appear natural. He spoke freely. Newspapers did not soften their language. "The cowardly assassin," one wrote, "expresses sorrow that he did not kill him instantly." Public anger grew sharper by the hour. Though officials suggested insanity, the idea found little support among the people. "There is talk of lynching," one paper warned. "Should the insanity dodge be played?" Guiteau may have been behind bars, but the tension surrounding his fate was far from settled. Elsewhere, Vice President Chester A. Arthur quietly arrived in Washington. His restrained demeanor, once a point of suspicion, now earned praise. Papers noted warm expressions of admiration of the modesty and manliness of his bearing. No one said it openly, but the implication was clear. The nation was preparing for more than one possible future. Sympathy messages poured in from across the United States and from abroad. Telegrams arrived faster than they could be answered. Governments, churches, civic groups all reached toward Washington. Epistles of sympathy from every section of the globe, one report noted, pouring in upon the president's brave little wife. Even Japan sent inquiries requesting immediate updates. Faith also took center stage. Churches held prayer services. Ministers spoke not of politics, but of endurance. Women's societies gathered quietly, grief and hope braided together in pews and parlors. And yet, amid the crisis, ordinary life continued. Newspapers still carried notices of railroad schedules, market goods, dog taxes, lodge meetings, summer drinks, plumbing services, and local advertisements. The juxtaposition was stark. National tragedy shared space with daily commerce. It was a reminder that history does not pause cleanly. It overlaps. As night fell on July 5th, another bulletin arrived. Garfield was resting. His pulse and temperature had steadied slightly. No dramatic improvement, no collapse. Just this. The president is at this hour sleeping quietly. For a nation suspended between fear and faith, that was enough, for now. July 5th, 1881, was not the day of death. It was not the day of recovery. It was the day of waiting. A day when headlines carried more weight than ever. When a single sentence could lift spirits or shatter them. When hope survived in fragments, stitched together by bulletins, prayers, and the quiet determination of a wounded man and the woman at his side. And as the country prepared to wake again tomorrow, one truth lingered above all others. The outcome had not yet been decided. The story was still unfolding. Wednesday morning, July 6th, 1881, comes slowly to Washington, not with celebration, not with certainty, but with something the country has not felt in days. A cautious breath. Newspapers arrive folded and smudged with fresh ink. Men pause on street corners before unfolding the page. Clerks hesitate at shop doors, reading first, unlocking later. Telegraph offices are still crowded, but the shouting has softened. Messages arrive, are read twice, then read again. This morning, people are no longer searching for disaster. They are searching for meaning. The bulletins are no longer hourly cries of alarm. They are measured, clinical, almost gentle. Inside the executive mansion, physicians choose every word with care. The president has passed a comfortable night. There has been no vomiting since the previous evening. Liquid nourishment has been retained. The pulse is lower, the temperature steadier. The danger is not declared over. But for the first time since Saturday, the news does not deepen the fear. It loosens it. Just slightly. One physician puts it plainly, and newspapers repeat the line again and again. The president has passed a comfortable night, and his condition this morning is decidedly more favorable. Not safe, not recovered, but favorable. That word, favorable, travels fast. Doctors are clear about one thing. The bullet remains where it is. There will be no probing today, no heroic intervention, no search for metal buried deep within flesh. One report explains why. The bullets have not yet been extracted, nor will they be searched for until the president is stronger. Another adds more starkly. Any manipulation would be attended almost to a certainty with fatal results. Time, not surgery, is now the treatment. Outside the White House gates, the mood shifts visibly. People still wait, but they wait differently. Some sit, some speak in lowered voices. The wild speculation of earlier days gives way to quiet watching. One paper notes, "The favorable news from the sick room had changed materially the appearance of everything. Cabinet members arrive and depart without haste. Vice President Chester A. Arthur comes quietly, stays briefly, and leaves reassured. The cheering intelligence received sent him away in a more comfortable frame of mind than he had enjoyed since the disaster." Washington is not rejoicing, but it is no longer bracing for an immediate funeral. Across the country, bells remain silent. But prayer meetings continue. Churches open their doors during the day. Letters pour into the Capitol, many addressed simply to Mrs. Garfield. One letter printed in the papers reads, "I must humbly thank our Heavenly Father for the encouraging hopes our nation now has. You have my deepest sympathy in this your hour of affliction." And Lucretia Garfield herself becomes part of the story. Papers speak of her courage, her endurance, the speed with which she reached Washington despite her own illness. The dispatches and letters all concur in admiration for Mrs. Garfield's courage and heroism through the trying ordeal she is passing. Inside the sick room, she remains near. Outside, her composure steadies the nation. But even as hope grows, unease has not vanished. Police report disturbances near government buildings. A man appears at headquarters carrying a pistol, declaring violent intentions toward Secretary Blaine. The incident is brief. He is removed quickly. The papers explain it plainly. It was soon seen the man was crazy. The crank was shown out of the grounds at once. Authorities emphasize what they have emphasized all along. There is no conspiracy. Despite rumors of nihilists, secret societies, foreign plots, and political factions, investigators insist. Not one of the officers employed on the case believed that Guiteau had an accomplice. The assassin remains alone in his cell, loud, unrepentant, certain of his own importance. Elsewhere in the papers, the world intrudes. Foreign dispatches crowd the columns, especially in immigrant newspapers that follow events abroad as closely as those in Washington. From Russia comes word of fire. In the city of Rovno, a great conflagration has swept through public buildings. Thousands are left without homes. One report states, all public buildings were destroyed and 5,000 families lost their homes. From Hungary, elections turn violent. Votes are cast amid chaos. Murders are reported at polling places. The political future appears unstable. From the Ottoman Empire, sentences are handed down. High-ranking officials are condemned for their roles in the murder of Sultan Abdulaziz. Appeals are filed. Some sentences are commuted. Troops are ordered to distant provinces. From North Africa, alarming news arrives. In Sfax, Tunisia, insurgents seize control. Europeans flee to ships in the harbor. A French consul is attacked. France prepares to intervene. The Arabs in Sfax have driven out all Europeans and occupied the fortress. From Great Britain, 2 stories share the page. One is quiet and chilling. A man found dead in a railway tunnel near Brighton, his throat cut, the suspected passenger gone. The other is loud and violent. Authorities firing on crowds during evictions in Ireland. The column then opened fire on the crowd. It is said that 30 people were wounded. And threaded through all of it, America's wounded president. Even abroad, the shock lingers. One foreign paper notes, in England, as in all other European countries, the assassination attempt on President Garfield has caused great consternation. Messages of concern continue to arrive in Washington from foreign ministers, monarchs, and governments. The rulers and governments of the entire world are bowed in grief at the murderous assault and have sent messages of condolence and prayers for a speedy recovery to the executive household. Back home, life presses on. Local papers still carry accounts of 4th of July celebrations, now several days past but still being remembered. Parades, fireworks, public readings of the Declaration, dances that went late into the night. One small-town paper reflects, "The celebration of the 4th was one of the most pleasant affairs in the history of this village, and will doubtless be long remembered." Even rain did not dampen the spirit. On nearby pages, notices appear as they always do. Wheat prices are steady, crops look promising. New settlers arrive by train. Over 30 in 1 week alone. Doctors are praised. Gunfire is warned against. There is entirely too much miscellaneous shooting than in and about town. It is too risky and should be stopped. Farm columns advise readers to store machinery under cover, harvest clover early, build cisterns, invest in land rather than chase uncertain wages. Advertisements remain bold. Steamships sail. Railroad excursions promise summer relief. Serialized novels continue uninterrupted. Pages of heartbreak and courtroom drama printed beside bulletins from the White House. History does not pause. It stacks. By evening, Washington grows quieter. Doctors reduce the frequency of bulletins. The most dangerous hours, they say, are late afternoon and sunset. When those pass without relapse, tension loosens just a little more. One physician remarks that there is more reason for hope now than at any point since the shooting. Another cautions that they do not yet dare predict recovery. Hope has returned. Certainty has not. By evening, Washington grows quieter. Doctors reduce the frequency of bulletins. The most dangerous hours, they say, are late afternoon and sunset. When those pass without relapse, tension loosens, but only slightly. One physician admits there is more reason for hope now than at any point since the shooting. Another warns that no prediction can yet be made. Hope has returned. Certainty has not. Across the country, churches remain open late. Lamps burn longer than usual. Telegraph operators sit ready, fingers resting near the keys. The nation does not celebrate. It does not mourn. It waits. As night settles on Wednesday, July 6th, Americans go to bed knowing only this: the president lives. The bullet remains. The danger has not passed. Tomorrow's paper will not merely report the news. It may decide the nation's mood. Thursday morning, July 7th, 1881. America wakes already alert. Shops open on time, but conversation lingers. Streetcars run their routes, yet passengers read instead of talk. In boarding houses and farm kitchens, breakfast is eaten standing up. One eye on the clock, the other on the page. Newspapers are no longer snatched. They are studied. People read past the first paragraph now. They reread the bulletins. They search for numbers, for patterns, for words that might mean something more than they did yesterday. The country has learned how fragile a sentence can be. At telegraph offices, messages arrive steadily, not urgently. Operators post them without shouting. The crowd leans in, close enough to read over one another's shoulders. The tone has changed. The bulletins are still cautious, still restrained, but no longer frantic. Inside the executive mansion, doctors speak softly and precisely, as if sound itself might matter. The president has passed a comfortable night. There has been no vomiting since the previous evening. Liquid nourishment has been retained. The pulse is lower, the temperature steadier. For the first time since the shooting, newspapers allow a new word to appear. Not boldly, but carefully. Improving. Garfield is awake. He speaks freely. He listens. He asks questions. He even jokes. When he grows weary of broth and eggs and asks, "I am tired of this wishy-washy stuff. Can't have beefsteak?" The doctors refuse. But they don't hide their relief. That appetite becomes a signal. One paper notes it plainly. The president's own confidence appears to be returning. Outside the White House gates, the crowds remain, but thinner now. Some sit on the curb, some talk quietly, others simply wait, hands folded around their newspapers. One report observes that favorable bulletins have, to a great extent, relieved the public anxiety. Not ended it. Relieved it. Washington continues its day, not with confidence, but with care. Across the country, newspapers are unfolded with slower hands. Men pause on sidewalks longer than they have in days. Clerks hesitate before opening shop doors. At telegraph offices, the shouting has softened. People lean closer now, not for catastrophe, but for nuance. The bulletins are no longer hourly screams of fear. They are measured, clinical, almost gentle. Inside the executive mansion, the doctors speak with restraint, choosing each word as if it might tip the balance. The president has passed a comfortable night. There has been no vomiting since the previous evening. He has retained liquid nourishment. His pulse is lower, his temperature steadier. For the first time since the shots were fired, the word improving appears, quietly, cautiously, in print. Garfield is awake. He talks freely. He asks questions. He listens. He even jokes. At one point, he grows tired of broth and soft eggs and says what many papers repeat with fascination. "I am tired of this wishy-washy stuff. Can't have beefsteak?" The doctors refuse, but they smile. That appetite, reported again and again, becomes a symbol. Hunger in these papers means life. Outside the White House, the crowds thin. Not gone, but thinner. Fewer people press against the iron fence. Fewer prayers are shouted aloud. Hope has not replaced fear, but it has softened it. One report notes that favorable bulletins have, to a great extent, relieved the public anxiety. Washington itself seems to exhale. Inside the sick room, new measures are taken against the oppressive July heat. Ice water circulates through coils. Flannel sheets are hung and rehung. Windows are adjusted inch by inch. Doctors experiment, not boldly but attentively, trying to shape the air itself into medicine. Even men who only days ago warned the president might not survive the night now admit that everything is working well. No one declares victory. No one dares. The danger is not gone. Infection still threatens. The bullet has not been found. Every small rise in temperature is watched like a warning bell. But today feels different. Still, the newspapers refuse to let readers forget the other figure in this story. Guiteau. Editors debate how much space he deserves, even as they continue to print him. His movements before the shooting are examined again. Gun shops, conversations, a request for a weapon that would kill. One paper recounts his behavior in custody. When rebuked by the district attorney for his language, Guiteau objects. Not to the charge, but to the tone. He insists he is a pious man. He asks that his ears not be offended by emphatic language. The words are reprinted without comment. None is needed. Across the Atlantic, foreign papers weigh in. German editors place blame not only on the man, but on the system that produced him. The spoils system, the culture of appointments, the bitterness of rejection. They express hope that Garfield, if he lives, will continue reforms already begun. The president's survival, even now, is framed as a political question as much as a human one. Elsewhere in the world, history does not pause. In Minsk, Russia, fire tears through the city. More than 600 houses are destroyed. Criticism falls quickly on the fire department, accused of slowness and poor preparation. In France, lawmakers argue fiercely over compulsory education. An amendment mandating religious instruction passes by a narrow margin, though many predict the bill will fail before the week is out. In Britain, reformers present a petition stretching more than 1,000 yards, signed by over 84,000 names, demanding the closure of Sunday saloons. Few believe Parliament will listen. In Ireland, the Land League urges farmers to contribute financially to the cause, warning that refusal would reveal selfishness at a moment of national need. The world, like America, is restless. Back home, Washington attends to its ordinary business alongside crisis. British Minister Sir Edward Thornton prepares to depart for Europe, honored with farewell resolutions. Treasury audits in Baltimore report that everything is correct. Military discipline cases, reviewed and amended by the president himself just days before the shooting, are quietly noted in the columns. A letter is printed to correct a rumor. Visiting politicians in Washington are not there to plot. They are there only to inquire about the president's condition. The newspapers seem eager to deny conspiracy wherever it appears. And then there is the rest of the page. Advertisements continue. Photographs of Guiteau are offered for sale. Whiskey is promoted as medicinal. Furniture, stoves, honey, oysters, all appear beneath reports of bullet wounds and pulse rates. Short moral tales sit beside medical bulletins. Farming advice shares space with assassination updates. Humor columns remain untouched. One reflection stands out, almost unnoticed. The virtue of prosperity is temperance. The virtue of adversity is fortitude. No editor highlights it, but readers see it. Across the country, people return to their routines cautiously. Groceries are bought, trains are boarded, letters are written, baseball games are scheduled. First watermelons of the season are celebrated in Mississippi. And still, everyone listens, everyone waits. The newspapers close the day without certainty, but not without something new. Not relief, not safety, but permission to hope. By the evening of Thursday, July 7th, 1881, Americans know only what the bulletins confirm. The president is alive. He has eaten. He has spoken. His strength remains. The immediate danger has eased, but it has not passed. Newspapers go to press with caution, aware that each report may change by morning. Here is a smoothed, broadcast-ready rewrite that keeps every fact, removes excess poetry, tightens repetition, and gives you a clear, engaging opening and a firm documentary-style ending appropriate for the close of the 7-day arc. I've kept the language plain, authoritative, and chronological, with clean transitions and no hindsight. By Friday, July 8th, 1881, the medical reports introduced no new dangers and no new assurances. Physicians confirm what the country has now heard for several days. The president is improving, but he remains under constant watch. No critical symptoms appear. No warnings are withdrawn. For the first time since the shooting, the news does not escalate. It holds steady. That steadiness defines the morning bulletins across the country. The language is measured and consistent from paper to paper. The president has passed a comfortable night. His pulse is steadier. His temperature has improved. He retains nourishment. He is alert. Several papers describe him as cheerful. One official bulletin states plainly, "The president has passed a most comfortable night and continues steadily to improve. He is cheerful and asks for additional food." Doctors emphasize that the improvement is real, but fragile. They repeat the cautions that have followed the nation all week. Two dangers remain foremost in their minds: secondary hemorrhage and blood poisoning. For the moment, neither has appeared. The accident most to be feared is blood poisoning, of which there is not yet the slightest symptom. Inside the executive mansion, even small adjustments are treated as news. One of the most discussed developments of the day is not a medicine or a procedure, but a bed. The president's original bed is judged unsuitable, too short, too low, and poorly positioned for ventilation. One report explains, "It was so short that his feet rested against the footboard." Another trouble was that the low bed placed him too low to get the breeze. A longer, higher bed is installed. A specialized invalid bed is ordered. Windows are adjusted. Ice is brought in. Inventors arrive without invitation, offering devices to cool the room. The summer heat presses heavily against Washington and against the sick room. The city watches the White House closely, but quietly now. Correspondents describe evenings that are hushed rather than crowded. People linger near the gates instead of pressing forward. Cabinet officers come and go without ceremony. Vice President Chester A. Arthur appears briefly, making clear he stands ready only if duty requires it, and nothing more. The oppressive quiet of a hot summer's night hung over Washington. People pressed against the gates, trying to look within. Inside the room, one presence is noted again and again: Lucretia Garfield. Papers dwell on her calm and restraint. They describe how the president brightens when she appears, and how she steadies him when he wishes to speak too much. She chides him gently by one sweet and slight pressure of the hands, and he is contented. Doctors limit her visits out of concern for her health, but agree her presence has a stabilizing effect. Across the country, the tone shifts. Prayer meetings continue, but with gratitude mixed with caution. In Boston, New York, and San Francisco, resolutions are passed denouncing violence and offering support. The New York Chamber of Commerce issues a formal statement. Political contentions and personal interests have sunk into insignificance. By day's end, it is reported that members of the chamber have subscribed $350,000 to be presented to Mrs. Garfield, not as charity, but as reassurance. When informed of it, she responds quietly. There was so much that was touching and beautiful in the sympathy of the American people that she did not dare trust herself to think of it. Elsewhere, ordinary life continues. Newspapers still carry poetry. One long moral piece, An Old Man's Story, recounts a man who knew success, fell into disgrace, and found redemption not through wealth, but through faith. Its closing lines offer readers something steady to hold on to. Advertisements fill the columns. Summer clothing is discounted. Boots and millinery are promoted. Grocers announce fresh goods. Patent medicines promise relief from fevers, liver complaints, and neuralgia. One advertisement declares, "No preparation on earth equals St. Jacob's oil as a safe, sure, simple, and cheap external remedy." Court notices announce estates to be settled. Property is listed for sale. Divorces are filed. In Connecticut towns, livery stables advertise hearses. Dentists announce office hours. Undertakers promise personal attention. Nothing stops. Beyond Washington, other stories demand space. In Maryland, a portable steam engine explodes during wheat threshing. The engine was blown into the air to a height of 35 yards. 3 men were killed outright. In Pittsburgh, extreme heat shuts down mill work. Sunstroke claims lives. 10 cases of sunstroke were reported, 3 of them fatal. In Arkansas, a debating club argument turns violent. One Noiler attacked Herod with a knife, inflicting 17 wounds. The attacker has not yet been arrested. In Illinois, quarry workers strike for higher wages. Employers threaten to import replacements. The taxpayers will not be charmed at the prospect of more paupers next winter. Abroad, unrest continues. Insurrection in Albania persists. Diplomatic maneuvering fills short columns. Rumors circulate and are denied with equal firmness. And still, the bulletins return. Late in the day, the message remains unchanged. The president is alive. The president is improving. The president is not yet beyond danger. No paper declares victory. No editor allows relief to harden into confidence. As presses roll on Friday night, Americans close the week knowing this. Hope is stronger than it was on Monday. Fear has not disappeared. Life has continued beside history. 7 days after the shot was fired, the president remains alive. Not recovered, not released from danger, but living. The nation has learned a new rhythm, measured by bulletins, by pulse and temperature, by the quiet movements inside a shaded room. Across the country, presses slow, churches darken, households fold their newspapers and set them aside. There is no celebration. There is no farewell. Only waiting. And when morning comes, Americans will open their papers once again, searching for the same line they have searched for all week. The president lives.